Good morning, friends. Happy Sabbath. Welcome back to Stories with Pastor Macy. Today, I thought we would read a story about the life of Ellen White. So we read this one maybe a month or so ago, and this is a fun type of book. It has two stories. So we flip it over, and there's another book. And this story is called Charlie Horse. Here we go. Long before anyone ever heard of an automobile, when nobody could possibly think of such a thing as television, or we might add the internet, there lived a horse named Charlie. His home was in the cold state of Vermont. Charlie was not a racehorse, nor did he belong to a wealthy man. He was just a country horse. Charlie was big and strong, and he had a face that made everybody think he was smart. His neck was curved just right, and he had beautiful spots on him the color of chestnuts. But hardly anyone paid attention to Charlie, because they said something was wrong with his back. His back was strong enough, but it had a little dip in the middle of it. It looked something like a tiny valley. Charlie was swayback. No one ever wrote down when Charlie was born or how old he was. He looked like other horses and he acted like one should, but there was something different about him. Charlie had a most unusual friend. His friend was one of God's angels, and Charlie's angel didn't care one bit if Charlie was swayback. Angels are like that. Back in the days when Charlie lived, people traveled in different ways than they do now. They rode in boats with big paddle wheels on their sides. Tiny engines poured out black smoke as they pulled swaying trains across the land. And there were wagons. Some wagons had 4 wheels and some had only 2. In the winter when it snowed, people drove sleighs with seats on them. They rode in carriages, buggies, and stagecoaches too. Horses like Charlie pulled all those wagons and sleighs and carriages and buggies. Welcome, Jeannie and Marilyn. Happy Sabbath. I'm glad you've joined us. We're reading a book about Charlie Horse and the life of Ellen White. One day, in the town of Sutton, Vermont, near where Charlie lived, a big stagecoach came to a stop in a cloud of dust. A man and his wife got off of that stagecoach with a few other people. They looked very tired, especially the tiny wife. Their names were James and Ellen White. The Whites had friends to meet them at the stagecoach stop. But their friends felt sorry for the Whites when they saw how tired they looked. So their friends took them home and fed them. Then they gave the Whites a room with a big soft bed. Oh, how good that bed looked to James and Ellen White. James and Ellen had come on God's business. James was a preacher, and Ellen, his wife, was a very special person too, because many of her close friends were angels. Angels talked with her and gave her messages from God. People called her visits with angels visions. Ellen White had come to Sutton because the people there, the ones who were Adventists, wanted to hear what God had to say through Ellen's friends, the angels. James and Ellen were very poor. They didn't even have enough money to buy, a horse and carriage of their own. That's why they had to ride in bumpy stagecoaches or in trains, boats, and wagons, or anything else that moved. And it wasn't so much fun to travel in those things either. And that is another reason why James and Ellen were so tired and sometimes got sick when they went places. Traveling was very hard for them. Some people in Sutton, Vermont were very kind to Mr. and Mrs. White. They sat quietly and listened to what the Whites had to tell them, but all the time they listened, they kept thinking, what can we do to help the Whites? adults. They get so tired from all their travels. Then someone had an idea, and everyone liked it when they heard about it. But they wanted to keep the idea a secret. No one was to tell James and Ellen. It was going to be a surprise. The night before Mr. and Mrs. White were to leave and go back home, Ellen had a visitor. Our visitor was one of her angel friends, and the angel had something to say. The angel knew all about Charlie, too. "Watch this," the angel said to Ellen, and as she watched, Ellen saw a picture of 2 country roads. The roads crossed each other. The next thing she saw were some men who came to the crossroads, and around them were wagons and a shiny carriage and several horses. The angel told Ellen that her Adventist friends from Sutton were going to surprise her and James with a gift. And the gift was to be a new covered carriage, and this would make their traveling much easier. "These people you see in the picture," the angel said, "will ask you to choose a horse for your very own. There will be 3 to choose from." As Ellen watched, she saw a beautiful golden brown horse prance in front of her. "This is one of the horses you are to choose from," the angel told her. "But don't take this one. See how nervous he is." Then another horse trotted past. It was a big, strong gray horse. "Don't choose that one either," the angel said. "Look how clumsy he is." The third horse she saw was a large, spotted, chestnut-colored animal, and it was Swayback. It was Charlie. "That is the horse for you," said the angel. "Choose that one." The next morning, James and Ellen White got ready to leave for home, and their friends from Sutton came by and took them for a ride into the country. They stopped where 2 roads crossed, and before she knew it, Ellen saw everything happen all over again, just like the night before in her vision. When their friends showed Charlie the horse to Ellen and James, Ellen said, "We will choose that one." Charlie became the Whites' very own horse now. And as time went on, he became a real friend to them. He was gentle and strong and good, and he always obeyed. The angel knew a good horse when he saw one, and Charlie was a good one. Charlie was the happiest in the fall of each year. That was the time for apples to be ripe, and he loved apples. Whenever he was pulling the carriage and saw an apple tree up ahead, he got all excited. Lowering his head, Charlie would grab an apple as he passed the tree, toss his head high into the air, and trot off happily eating the apple. He enjoyed every bite. Charlie and the Whites had good times together. And all of this really happened because one of God's angels knew about Charlie and told Ellen what a good horse he was. Travel was easier now. The Whites could stop and rest whenever they wanted to. Charlie was a real blessing to them. And the Whites thanked God many times that they had him. Even in old age, Ellen White remembered Charlie. She never forgot him, not only because he was a blessing, but because he was a real friend too. What a good and thoughtful God we have. He takes the same special care of you and me today that he did of James and Ellen White when he sent an angel to tell them about the gift of Charlie Horse. I love him very much. How about you? That is the end of our story. I am so glad that God cares about us and that he takes care of us and sends us friends, whether they're animals or humans, to be part of life with us. So I hope you have a very happy Sabbath, and I will see you again soon.